The hospital room was cloaked in shadows, its sterile walls whispering secrets no one dared to speak aloud. A faint beep from the heart monitor punctuated the silence, steady and artificial like the life Danielle Miller now pretended to live. Pale light from the hallway sliced through the blinds, illuminating the stark contrast of her figure against crisp white sheets. Her eyes, trained to remain still beneath closed lids, betrayed nothing, not the fear, not the rage, and certainly not the truth. A soft creak announced the doctor's presence. He moved with the precision of a man accustomed to grave matters, but his face was taut with uncertainty as he approached. In his hand, a folded slip of paper, crumpled at the edges, trembled just slightly as he leaned close. "Your eyesight is intact," he whispered, barely above a breath. "But are you sure you want to go through with this?" Danielle didn't speak. She couldn't. Instead, she gave the faintest nod, as if even that were too much truth to reveal. He hesitated. A long second passed before he slipped the note into her hand and retreated into the hallway, the door sighing shut behind him. Danielle remained still, muscles clenched beneath the blankets. She knew what was at stake. She hadn't built a billion-dollar empire by trusting blindly, but now blindness was her weapon. And Marcus, her husband of 8 years, was the target. Marcus had always been charming to charming. His laugh could disarm, his lies wrapped in silk. Once she'd believed every word. Once she'd let herself lean into the fantasy of a man who left the limelight of music to support her ambition. But cracks had begun to show, misplaced phone calls, whispered conversations in rooms he thought were empty, a bank transaction in the Caymans. And then the worstest single, anonymous message: "He's not who you think he is." The fall had been staged, every bruise calculated. She'd paid a doctor she trusted, prepared the story, even practiced the tremble in her voice before deciding not to use it. Now, here she lay, blind in the eyes of everyone, especially Marcus. She heard his footsteps before she saw his shadow stretch across the door. Her heart fluttered against the monitors, not from fear, but anticipation. If Marcus was innocent, this deception would destroy her. But if he wasn't, if her instincts were right, then this was the only way to see him clearly. The door opened. Danielle didn't flinch, didn't breathe. She simply waited, blind, silent, listening for the man she loved to reveal who he truly was. Before the accident, before the sterile hospital bed and whispered lies, Danielle Miller's life moved with the efficiency of an algorithm. She was the founder and CEO of Folklore, a sleek tech startup in Atlanta that had skyrocketed into the national spotlight under her razor-sharp leadership. Calm under pressure, elegant in boardrooms, Danielle thrived on logic and control. Every risk was measured, every win was earned, and for a long time, love had seemed like just another calculated success. That's when Marcus entered the picture, a man as different from her as chaos from code. He'd been a music producer when they met, a whirlwind of laughter and impulsive ideas. The kind of man who danced through rooms instead of walking. Danielle, all strategy and silence, found herself drawn to his unpredictability. He softened her edges, made space for her ambition, while folding her into his world of late-night jam sessions and impromptu weekend getaways. When she landed her first million-dollar round of funding, Marcus was by her side, toasting her success with cheap champagne and pride in his eyes. But time has a way of distorting even the brightest reflections. As Voxera grew and Danielle's Days filled with meetings, interviews, and investor calls. Marcus's career dimmed. The studio work dried up. His network thinned. What once looked like creative freedom started to resemble aimlessness. He became a fixture in their luxury condo cooking. Elaborate meals, volunteering for charity events, playing the role of the devoted husband while she climbed higher and higher. At first, it worked. They told themselves it was partnership, a modern balance. But somewhere along the way, dependence replaced support, and resentment bloomed where admiration once lived. Danielle tried to ignore the shift, but the signs were everywhere. The subtle tension in his smile when she spoke about her successes. The way he'd retreat into silence after hosting another gala in her honor. Late-night phone calls he took on the balcony, voices muffled by wind. The sudden change in passwords on his laptop, and then the affection more intense, more physical, almost desperate, as if he were trying to make up for something neither of them dared name. Her younger sister, Tia, wasn't fooled. He loves the spotlight, Donnie, even if it's yours. Now, something about him isn't adding up, she warned one night over dinner, eyeing Marcus as he excused himself to take a call. Danielle brushed it off with a tired smile. Tia was protective, sometimes overly so, and real love deserved more trust than suspicion. Still, the unease spread, quiet but persistent. It was her assistant, Maya, who finally voiced what Danielle couldn't. She approached Danielle after a meeting, hesitant, her voice low. "I didn't want to say anything, but I saw Marcus downtown yesterday. He said he was at a charity meeting, but..." Her eyes said the rest. Danielle's breath caught, but she said nothing. No confrontation, no explosion. Just a nod and a thank you. Because deep down, something had already cracked. She went home that night and looked at Marcus like he was a painting she'd stared at for years but never truly seen. He kissed her, like always, asked about her day, poured her a glass of wine. Everything was the same except her. For the first time, she saw the distance between them, not as a season or a phase, but as a truth they'd both stopped acknowledging. She was alone, successful, admired, envied, but deeply, utterly alone. And that's when the idea began to form. Not all at once, not as a plan, but as a flicker. What if she stopped reacting? What if she stopped asking, stopped confronting, stopped trying to fix a version of Marcus that no longer existed? What if she watched instead, waited, let him reveal himself? She remembered the night she decided. She had just won a major contract, Voxora's biggest yet, and Marcus had forgotten. He made up for it with roses and a weekend trip she didn't want. But the guilt in his eyes wasn't about forgetting. It was about being caught. She knew then, she just didn't know how far it went. Now, in the hospital bed, in a world where she was supposedly blind and helpless, Danielle held power. Again, it was a dangerous game, but she'd played harder ones. If she had to lose everything to see Marcus clearly, so be it. She had loved him. But love, she realized, had made her blind, so now she chose to stay that way until the truth made her. It started with a scream. Short, sharp, echoing off the marble walls like glass, shattering in a gallery. Danielle's body hit the stairs just right, limbs twisted. Head turned, blood pooled delicately on the white tile like crimson ink. When Marcus found her at the base of the staircase, he shouted her name over and over, the panic in his voice loud enough to wake the neighbors. The ambulance arrived in minutes. Concussion, head trauma, a miraculous survival, they called it. And then the diagnosis: temporary psychosomatic blindness, unpredictable neurological response to trauma. Rare, but not impossible. She would need rest, silence, time. But behind closed doors, beneath fluorescent lights, in the sterile quiet of her hospital room, Danielle clutched the hand of the only person who knew the truth. "I can see everything," she whispered to Dr. Kalen, her private physician, the one she'd trusted to orchestrate the illusion. "Don't tell him, not a word." Kalen had hesitated, but ultimately nodded. The records were falsified. The scans doctored. To the world, Danielle Miller was blind, fragile, dependent, exactly as she needed to be when she returned home. Wrapped in bandages and layers of false vulnerability, Marcus played the role of doting husband with award-worthy precision. He fluffed pillows, adjusted lights, guided her carefully through rooms they'd designed together. He kissed her forehead every night before bed and told her how proud he was of her strength. But Danielle could feel the shift beneath the surface. His touch lingered too long when he thought she couldn't see. His voice lowered to a hush during late-night phone calls. He whispered behind closed doors, soft, sharp sentences punctuated by tension. Asterisk, she doesn't know anything. Just a little longer. Asterisk, she kept her face still, kept her eyes blank. But her mind, always sharp, always 5 steps ahead, moved into motion that night. When Marcus left to grab a bottle of wine from the cellar, Danielle moved through the house with precision. Her steps were memorized. Every hallway, every creak in the floorboard etched into muscle memory. She opened the drawer beneath the kitchen sink and retrieved the tiny audio recorders she'd purchased weeks before, just in case. She had 5. Enough for the master bedroom, his office, the kitchen, the entryway, and the library, Marcus's favorite room, where he always went when he thought she was asleep. By morning, they were in place, invisible to the eye. But to Danielle, they became sight itself. For days, she listened, to footsteps, to laughter, to silence that felt too careful. Marcus's tone was syrupy when he spoke to her, but sharp when he answered calls. He never used names, only vague phrases. Asterisk, it's almost done. I told you she bought it. We have to be patient. She wrote everything down, dates, times, word patterns. He was careful, but not enough. And still, he touched her cheek like he loved her. It was the ultimate betrayal, not just the lies, but the performance of love while plotting behind her back. Danielle had faced hostile takeovers, predatory investors, and patent theft, but none of it compared to this, the person she once trusted most, pretending to protect her while slowly dismantling her life. One night, after he tucked her in and left for another call, she lay perfectly still beneath the covers, earbuds in, recorder humming. His voice came through clear in the library. Asterisk, she's blind. She can't do anything now. It's all falling into place. And then another voice, female, sharp, unfamiliar. Asterisk, just make sure her signature goes through next week. After that, we disappear. Asterisk, Danielle didn't flinch, didn't breathe, but inside, something turned to steel. Her husband was planning something final, and the clock was ticking. She wasn't just pretending to be blind anymore. She was pretending not to see what she was going to do next. The house felt colder now, not in temperature, but in soul. Danielle moved like a ghost through its rooms, barefoot and silent, the woman she used to be retreating deeper behind the mask she wore. Pretending to be blind turned her world into something unreal and endless. Night where every sound, Every whisper, every shift in air carried meaning. Marcus still touched her shoulder with tenderness, still brushed her hair with devotion. But the words he spoke when he thought she was blind were darker than any silence she'd ever known. It started with the lie about her appointments. Every Wednesday, he told her they were headed to physical therapy. He wheeled her to the car, helped her into the passenger seat, and played soft music like always. But the route was off. The stops too brief. One day, after feeling the car turn back too soon, she slipped out of her seatbelt, crawled back into the house, and made her way to her study, careful not to trip the newly installed recorder. What she heard that night made her breath catch, like a fist in her throat. Marcus had brought Jade into the house. She remembered, Jade vaguely from his past and ex from before their marriage. A wild card, intense and beautiful, the kind of woman who chased storms instead of avoiding them. Danielle listened to the recording with her fists clenched as Marcus poured wine, chuckled low and said, "She's blind now, and broken, just like she broke me." The bitterness in his voice cut deeper than she expected, like her success had been a personal wound, like her strength had somehow emasculated him. Jade laughed, smoky and cruel, and Danielle could picture her sitting in the armchair, legs crossed, her eyes scanning the house like she owned it. That night, Danielle didn't sleep. She lay on her side, facing away from Marcus as he slipped into bed, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't his usual. He sighed contentedly. She stayed still. The next betrayal came days later. Danielle had left the safe in her office locked, the one containing her original investor agreements, board contracts, and proprietary documents everything Voxera was built on. Late one night, she heard Marcus's voice outside the door. "Don't worry, I have it covered." She uses her thumbprint to open it. All I had to do was press her hand while she slept. Then a low chuckle. "Once the board sees this, I'll take her place. Her company, her money, everything." Danielle sat in the dark, listening to the man she once trusted steal her life in pieces. Her heartbreak was no longer a clean break. It splintered like glass under pressure, devastating and sharp. But beneath the pain was fury. How dare he touch her like she was sacred by day and strip her bare by night? She doubled down on her efforts, planted more devices, recorded everything, learned to interpret the rhythms of the house like a symphony of treachery. Every closed door, every hushed phone call, every sigh laced with impatience. And all the while, she played the role of helplessness so convincingly that even Marcus, who once claimed to know her soul, never suspected a thing, but it was wearing her thin. One night, she sat beneath the stream of hot water in the shower, her knees curled to her chest, her hands shaking. The room steamed around her, fogging the mirror she never looked into anymore. Her eyes were wide open, staring blankly ahead, silent tears mixed with the water trailing down her cheeks. "I gave him everything. She whispered to no one. He gave me this." Her voice cracked like a breaking bone. Tia came over the next morning, her tone urgent, her eyes stormy with suspicion. "Donnie, I'm telling you, something's off. He's using your money, he's cancelling meetings, he's God, he's not even pretending anymore. You need to stop this. Let me help you. Let me do something." Danielle, still wearing the pale robe of a woman in recovery, reached out slowly and pressed her fingers to Tia's wrist. "Not yet," she said softly. "I need the full truth." It wasn't enough to expose him halfway. She needed undeniable proof, not just of betrayal, but of intent, premeditated theft, corporate espionage, fraud. She wasn't just protecting her heart anymore. She was protecting her legacy, her company, her name. But the cost of patience was rising. Every hour she pretended to be blind felt like a slow suffocation. The house that once held their dreams had become a stage for deception, and she was the quiet audience to a show she never bought tickets for. And still, Marcus kissed her cheek. Every morning, like nothing had changed. Called her baby and asked if she needed help to the bathroom. But Danielle saw him now, not with her eyes, but with every cell in her body. He thought she was powerless. He thought he'd already won. But the day he brought Jade into their bedroom and shut the door behind him, Danielle felt the last of her mercy die. She wasn't a ghost. Anymore, she was a storm waiting to strike. The table was set with meticulous care white linen, polished silverware, wine breathing beside a pair of crystal glasses. Candles flickered gently in the dimmed dining room, casting warm halos on the walls like memories. Danielle sat at the head of the table, back straight, wearing a sleek black dress and her signature dark glasses. Her hands fumbled deliberately with her napkin, her fingers hovering uncertainly near the water glass. From across the room, hidden in a bookshelf, a discreet camera recorded everything. Marcus entered right on cue, a bottle of their favorite, red in hand, a surprised smile blooming across his face. "You remembered," he said, his voice touched with something like sentimentality or guilt dressed in nostalgia. 10 years. He kissed her cheek. "You look beautiful." Danielle tilted her head toward the sound of his voice, her expression serene. "Thank you," she said softly. "I wanted to do something special for us." She reached across the table blindly, letting her hand graze the silverware. "To thank you for everything you've done for me since the accident. Your support, your patience." Marcus settled into his seat, easing into the role he'd perfected for months. Loving, attentive, harmless. "Of course, baby. I'm just glad you're healing. I've always had your back." She smiled faintly. "I know." Her voice dipped into something quieter. "That's why this felt right. A chance to say goodbye to the past." He blinked, uncertain, but lifted his glass when she did. "2 new beginnings," he offered. They drank in silence, the room full of shadows and slow-burning tension. Then Danielle set her glass down and reached up. Slowly, deliberately, she removed her dark glasses. Her eyes met his. Marcus froze. His smile faltered. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. "Danielle, I can see you," she said, her voice flat, almost gentle. "I've always seen you." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Panic flickered in his eyes. I don't understand," but she was already reaching for her phone. With a tap, the room filled with sound. His voice, asterisk, "She's blind now, and broken, just like she broke me. Asterisk, asterisk, just make sure her signature goes through next week. After that, we disappear. Asterisk, asterisk, once the board sees this, I'll take her place, her company, her money." Asterisk, Marcus's face collapsed into something pitiful. Wait, Donnie, listen to me. That wasn't Jade manipulated me. She was never supposed to go that far. Danielle tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle already solved. "You can stop now," she said coldly. "This was never about Jade. This was about you. You didn't love me. You loved my power." He stood up abruptly, knocking his chair back. "You think you're so perfect. You think you didn't change. You built a damn empire and left me behind. You made me feel small, disposable. She stared at him, unmoved. And so you tried to destroy me. Her voice was steel now. You stole from me, used me, slept with her in our bed. And you thought I wouldn't see it coming. His breathing was shallow. Danielle, please. But she was already sliding a manila envelope across the table. Those are your divorce papers, already filed. He blinked. What? Oh, and one more thing, she added, rising to her feet. You remember that board meeting I was supposed to attend next week? It happened this morning. Without you. The evidence I collected was enough to revoke your access to everything. Voxera's board has officially blacklisted you, permanently. Every contract, every account, every ounce of power you thought you had, it's gone. Marcus stumbled backward like he'd been struck. You can't do that. I already did. The air between them hung heavy, scorched by betrayal and finality. I was willing to share everything with you, she said, her voice low but unwavering. My life, my world, my heart. But you didn't just betray, you underestimated me. Marcus collapsed into the chair, head in his hands, the weight of his failure crashing down. Danielle turned away, calm, controlled, victorious. He had played his game, but she had rewritten the rules, and she had seen everything. The automatic doors parted as Danielle strode into the Voxera headquarters. Head held high, sunlight catching in her eyes, clear, sharp, and unshaded. No more dark glasses, no more hesitations. The staff paused, their gazes following her, not with pity or confusion, but with reverence. She was back not as the woman who'd disappeared after the accident, but as something newer, stronger, a presence sharpened by betrayal, but no longer bound to it. Her heels clicked confidently on the polished floors as she entered. The executive wing Marcus's name already removed from the wall outside the boardroom. Her inner circle was waiting. Tia, seated with arms crossed, offered a subtle nod of pride. Her legal team had already begun finalizing asset reclamations and contract revisions. The board, once wavering in Marcus's charm-shadowed promises, now stood unified behind her. They had seen the recordings, the deception, the strength. It took for her to outmaneuver it all without ever breaking character, and now they looked to her not just as a founder, but as a force. Her phone buzzed twice, Jade unanswered, blocked. Danielle didn't even glance at the screen. Later that week, she sat in her therapist's office, the same one she'd visited, quietly after the accident, long before anyone knew the truth. The room felt softer now, less like a place to hide and more like one to breathe. She sipped her tea and said with calm certainty, I lost sight to see clearly, but I see myself now, and I will never unsee what I learned. The words weren't dramatic, they were real, grounded. She wasn't angry anymore, just awake. The storm had passed, but instead of ruin, it left clarity. She saw how often she had silenced her instincts in the name of love, how easily love could blur into sacrifice, and sacrifice into erasure. But now, every piece of her life would be deliberate. No more shadow games. No more whispered doubts. In the months that followed, Danielle quietly founded the Clear Foundation, a private initiative supporting women trapped in emotionally abusive or manipulative marriages, especially those within high-powered public-facing lives. She offered financial counseling, legal aid, and safe haven networks. She didn't need the press. She didn't do it for redemption. She did it because she understood, intimately, how hard it was to leave something that looked perfect on the outside but hollowed you from within. Back at Voxera, things thrived. Her leadership grew more intuitive. She delegated with trust. Her office door stayed open more often. She laughed more, lived more, and she never doubted herself again. What Marcus had tried to take from her was not just power, but certainty. But in trying to break her, he'd unknowingly handed her the blueprint to rebuild. The love story hadn't broken her, it had revealed her. The morning was quiet, wrapped in golden light and the hush of a world just beginning to stir. Danielle sat on the porch of her lake house, legs curled beneath her, a mug of coffee warm in her hands. No phone, no meetings, just birdsong and the slow, deliberate rhythm of peace. There was no drama left to chase, no revenge to savor. Marcus was gone out of her life, out of her company, out of her story. The storm had passed long ago, and what remained wasn't silence, but serenity. The air smelled like dew and possibility. She watched the sun rise over the still water, its reflection soft and imperfect, just like healing. The notebook beside her had seen many versions of her, angry, broken, hopeful, strategic, but this morning, her handwriting was steady, her words simple. She opened to a fresh page and wrote, "Asterisk, he thought I couldn't see, but I saw everything that mattered, including who I am." Asterisk, a breeze moved through the trees as she set the pen down, her gaze following the ripples on the lake. There was no need to look back. She had already gathered everything she needed from the wreckage, her truth, her strength, her voice. A soft smile played at her lips. She didn't win by destroying him. She won by finding herself.